It's a Craggy Rugby special. My name's Alan Deegan, and myself and Danny, the stats man, have been doing a lot of work over the summer on looking at the stats of the players that have played for Connacht right through from the start of the professional era in 1995. We've listed it all out. We sent it out to fans. We got a lot of people sending back their top 3 selections for each position. So now we've got the Craggy Crew, or most of the Craggy Crew, together to talk about that. So tonight we've got Lindy McKenzie. Hi, Lindy.
Hello, evening.
We've got Niall Packy Shield. For people who are confused when we use Niall and Packy, he's the one person. Hi, Niall.
Both of us are great. How are you?
And of course, Dave Finn. We couldn't forget Dave. I'm sure we'll find some rants out of you tonight, Dave.
No, I'm not going to rant. There will be passionate discussion. There will be no rants. There will indeed. So the way we're going to run this tonight, we're going to look at groupings of the players, in order to keep this not from going on all night. We're going to group them into the various groupings. So the back 3, centres, half backs, front row, second row, and back row. The one main thing we can't do tonight is pick the same player in multiple positions. So for instance, John Muldoon, and Danny will give me the stat on John Muldoon in a second, I'm sure, could easily be picked at 6 and 8. And the reason for that, Danny?
John Muldoon has played the most games at 6 as well as 8 for Connacht. Started the most games. Started more games than anyone at 6 and started more games than anyone at 8. So, yes, he had 327 games, so you can imagine he managed to do that. So yes, we're limiting him to one.
Okay, can I interrupt? Of those games, how many more did he play at 6 or 8?
Okay, 2 seconds. So he started 167 games at 6.
Yeah.
And he started 111 games at 8.
Okay, that's great. Thanks.
Good to know. And then he also can tell us who the most successful players are in those positions. In other words, from start, and we only did starting. We could not possibly even consider doing, players when they come off the bench and winning percentages. So we only did winning percentages from when they started matches. So we'll bring that in as we go along. So if we get into a debate about certain things, we can always use that as a tiebreaker. So let's start with the back 3. Starting at full back, we have a choice of Gavin Duffy, Tiernan O'Halloran, or Danny Reardon. They were the 3 most popular players, but if you want to add someone else in there, we can. At 14, we're looking at Ní Eddie Sean Carr, and Conor McPhillips. And then at 11, we're looking at Matt Healy, Fetu Vanankolo, and Danny Poolman. So let's go. Lindley, you've watched more rugby than all of us put together, I'd say, from a Connacht point of view. What do you think?
Okay, well, for a start, I didn't go back as far as the 1990s. I only went back to about 2005, so I'm probably maybe missing someone out here. So for that, I apologise. But the first 2 at fullback who came to mind were immediately Gavin Duffy and Tiernan O'Halloran. They were the immediate 2. And if I was to go back and look at the 2 of those players, I think Gavin has been through probably a lot more changes within Connacht during that time. He's gone through he went through the years when Connacht were, going to be, disbanded. And if I was to choose between those 2, I would probably choose Gavin Duffy.
Fans' choice as well. He had the most choice so far. What do you think, Niall?
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree. I always felt we kind of missed out on a few really good years from Duffy when he was in Harlequin. So on balance, I'd probably have to go with it as well.
Dave, are you going to back that up?
Yeah, more or less. I think we have to explain to people. There's 2 things that strike me about just in general and specifically fullback is. Probably we have to distinguish. This is the best Connacht fullback because you can make a case that the best fullback who's ever played for Connacht is Mills Mulaina.
That's my choice.
But he is not the best Connacht fullback because on the pitch, and we have to go on the pitch, he was massively important off the pitch, but on the pitch, he was not the best fullback, best Connacht fullback. Mm-hmm. There's also recency bias
because when I first started watching Connacht, it was Gavin was at 15 and Tiernan was at 14. And I think a lot of the fans have come in the last 5 or 6 years have only seen Tiernan as a fullback. But in terms of the three, and I mean, it's very harsh. I have to hold my hands up here. There's a few of the guys that we'll be talking about in the fans list that I didn't see in the flesh. I've only seen on TV. Danny Reardon would definitely be one of those. So I think the guys are right. I think in terms of purely in the best fullback Connacht has had in terms of what he's done on the pitch, it's Gavin. But if we do this in 5 years' time, Tiernan could well come out on top.
Can I just say there, if we do it in 5 years' time, it could be John Porch.
He certainly started well. I thought John Porch would be problematic at fullback, and I'm really happy to say he has really, certainly in these early days as a fullback, proved me hopelessly wrong on that, and I'm delighted to say so.
Good. And of course, nobody picked Henshaw, because that's where he started with us as a fullback.
Yeah, that's true.
What was the stats there, Danny, for Henshaw?
Henshaw has 33 starts at fullback, and he's a 55% winning ratio.
33?
Yeah. Gavin Duffy?
Gavin Duffy had the most. He has 137 starts for Connacht at fullback, but only a 34% winning ratio. And Tiernan had 110 starts with a 50% ratio.
Yeah, but as Linley rightly said, Gavin played when Connacht were not the most successful team in the world. Okay, so 15 is Gavin Duffy. 14, Nia Dialokin, Sean Carr, Conor McPhillips. Anybody else?
Wayne Munn fairly soldiered there when there wasn't a lot going on for Connacht. But I'm not sure if he was on the left wing or the right wing, actually. I have a funny feeling he was more of a left winger. But I think when there were slim pickings, he came up trumps an awful lot for Connacht.
I have another one as well, and that's Matt Mostyn.
Yes.
I'm not sure if he was left or right, but he definitely played more than 100 times for Connacht, was obviously selected on the Irish team. And I think he scored something like 115 points in my stats. I'm not sure if that's correct, but that's what I have. So I'll put him in the mix as well.
Matt Mostyn actually played fullback, both wings and 13.
That's almost problematic.
Duffy did the same.
Did he?
Yeah, Duffy, Mostyn, Reardon and Munn all played fullback, both wings and 13 for Connacht.
So what about Matt Mostyn? Anyone else fancy Matt Mostyn at 14 over Nia Dialokin? Fionn Carr?
I probably do, I didn't think of him, but I probably do.
I think Fionn is going to suffer from not second season syndrome, but second spell syndrome. For the younger and the more recent cohort, they'll only remember him from the second spell post when he came back from up the east. But in the first season, that first spell, he was superb. Mostyn hadn't even again slightly before.
If you want just a quick stat, I know I'm taking over from Danny on this one, but Fionn Carr is the second top try scorer on 42 tries for Connacht.
Yeah, but I wonder. Listen, I suppose this is why we're doing this. But you have the ratio of games played and all that. He had a spectacular. His first spell, he had a spectacular try scoring rate. He seemed to pull tries out of thin air a lot of times.
Okay, any thoughts for Dialokin? Because you talk about recency bias. That's who the fans went for.
I just want to give you a stat on Dialokin. Dialokin was the most started 14 for Connacht at 76 times.
Wow.
And Matt Mostyn was in second with 46 starts.
I find that's surprising. I think Nee's story is more where he came from, both as a person and in terms of rugby, is that he's not. Players who are playing for Trinity don't necessarily become internationals. The fact that we gave him a chance, he took it with both hands and has run with it. It's just when he was good, he was very good. I think he's a bit like some of the guys on this list. He's going to suffer from the fact that he got injured a lot, and that kind of killed his momentum.
I think the other thing about Nee is that he came as a very raw winger, and to be fair, he saved his best to that final in Edinburgh. It was the first time I had seen him play with such confidence. Even the chip ahead that he did for that try he'd never done it before, and I thought that was ultimately his most brilliant performance. But I don't think from start to finish for Connacht, he was probably the best on that wing.
Fair enough. I think
okay, so we go with Matt Mostyn then. Irish international, played multiple positions.
Yeah, I think I would actually.
And Lily wants Matt Mostyn. Dave, go on.
Personally, I would go with Fionn, but it's 2-1. I'm not going to fight that. I may save it for further on. But no.
Look, I must say, can I just interrupt? I mentioned Matt only because he wasn't on the list. Yeah. I think Fionn Carr was outstanding at the time. He was a superb winger. He lit the sports ground up whenever he took the ball. So when I said mention Matt Mostyn, it wasn't that I was against Fionn Carr. I was just mentioning his name because I thought while he was with Connacht, he was a consistently high performer.
Go on, tell me who you're choosing. Who would you pick?
To be honest, between the two, I'm not overly sure, apart from I think that possibly Matt contributed more to Connacht than Fionn.
I might jump in here and help you out on this. Carr actually only started 28 times at 14 and only won 25% of his games. He actually started a lot more at 11. He started 58 times and had a 40% winning record.
There's an argument to be made. We can pick the two of them because there are two wing positions.
Are you going to tell me you're not going to pick Matt Healy, our top try scorer, in the other position?
Okay, can I just jump in here again because I'm confused about the wings because I'm not really conscious of. I didn't really write the different 14 and 11 down here and list them off. Another one can I throw into the mix is Donny Pullman.
Danny Pullman's there at 11. He's down as a third choice. Fetu Vainicolo is also down as a possible for 11.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't think Fetu probably played enough for Connacht.
Instead of let's pick 14. Why don't we just pick the two best wingers? Because wingers unlike props can switch with relatively little problem. Because I think if you look at I think Matt again he came from NI, he came from AIL. His problems have been injuries, but given that he has been so injury troubled in the last 2 to 3 years, he still comes up with tries. It's just the injuries are just taking long.
In order to make sure we keep this rock and roll, and I want each of you.
I will.
And Niall to give me your two wingers. It doesn't matter which, just two wingers.
I think I'd go with Matt Mostyn and the two Matts actually, Matt Mostyn, Matt Healy.
Go on, Lindley.
Good balance on that actually as well. A bit more size to Matt Mostyn.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, out the right wing. Yeah, I'm thinking. Yeah.
I think that's a pretty fair, selection, to be honest. I personally liked Donny Pullman's play. I thought he contributed a huge amount to Connacht while he was there, but maybe he didn't have the same excitement that Matt Healy brings to the game. So I would probably agree with the two Matts, Matt Healy and Matt Mostyn.
Well, I personally would go for Fiona and Matt, but I have no objections to the two Matts.
Okay, a much easier selection now in the centres. At 12, I don't think there's going to be too many people arguing with Bundee Aki. He was certainly the only person who got unanimous decision wearing the 12 jersey was Bundee Aki. The other choices then that are on there are Dave McSharry and Keith Matthews. Then at 13, the most popular choice, not by much, was Robbie Henshaw, with Tom Farrell close behind and Darren Yap not that much further behind for people who would have remembered Darren Yap, who was a fine player in the early days of Connacht Rugby. Okay, Lindley, I'll let you go first again.
Hey, look, I have to add another one to the mix.
Go for it.
I just have to. And you could probably guess who I might say. And I have to give him a nod because he's still with Connacht. Come on, guys.
Not Tim.
Absolutely, Tim. He might get a highly commended, but I have to give a nod to Tim.
The bias.
No.
Okay, hang on.
Hold on a second.
Wait a second. Let Danny give you some stats on Tim Allnutt. Do you have the stats there for Tim Allnutt, Danny?
I do, yeah. I've stats for Tim. When he started at 12, he started 46 games and he had a 52% winning ratio.
Jeez.
There you go. And think about when he was playing for Connacht.
Connacht were very good when he was playing for Connacht. Great wins.
I think Darren Yep was an amazing player as well, to be honest. And there's another player I'll throw in there as well, who was a huge servant to Connacht Rugby. We're not necessarily always talking about the best on the pitch in some cases, but I think Owen Griffin was a huge, performer and servant to Connacht Rugby in his best days when he was there.
Yes, he was very close to getting in there instead of Darren Yap. There was only one vote in it.
I think the choice here in many ways is pretty obvious, because they probably are the two who have gone on for international honours.
Yeah, I don't think we'll get any arguments there, are we, guys? It's
very unusual that you can say for Connacht, well, being as nice and all as we can be, that you can say at the time Aki and Henshaw were, in my opinion anyway, and I could say it in any company, were probably the best central partnership in Europe at the time when they were at that season. That it was a shame. Like, Tom Farrell he's been fantastic over the last number of years, and he's brought something to the table that I think very few players in Ireland have. With his ability to offload and that. But Aki and Henshaw were just they were a stone wall in the centre, and they just to me they were just brilliant there. And I watched the final again there lately, and
I've done that too,
just to see. Yeah, we all have probably whenever you need to pick me up. But the whole Henshaw was absolutely, he was outrageous then. He really was. They were outrageous. I think it was some partnership, and you can even see it the odd time when they play for Ireland. Actually, they just they seem to
sort of have an intuitive sort of relationship, don't they?
Yeah, they do.
So that was a nice, easy one. Let's move on to one that will probably be relatively easy. The last of the backline partnerships. Looking at 9 and 10. So according to the fans, Eric Elwood edges out Jack Carty with Aj McGinty coming in the third spot, and then at 9 you've Kieran Marmion followed by Conor McGuinness, and then quite a distance behind actually was Frank Murphy. But anyone else got stuff they want to throw in there that we might be missing?
No, I would have. Yeah. The only other one solid before he left was Ian Keighley, but I don't think he can compare to. Look, to be honest, you can't go. You just can't go past Eric Elwood.
There is a clear drop off between the top two, and it shows how much of an impression Aj made. That he was here for less than a calendar year, and he's third.
Absolutely.
And if you consider that we had, again, we're back to great players who happened to play for Connacht rather than great Connacht players. Dan Parks was here. Maya Nakora was a great servant, but he's still
the drop off. About what William thinks of Maya Nakora.
Good idea. Thank you for that.
But I mean, Jack is. The reason Ash played in the final was because Jack had his horrible accident.
Yeah, absolutely.
But then Aj was brilliant in the final, but it says a lot about how far ahead Jack is of Aj, that the starting fullback in the game the only final we've won is third behind Jack. But Jack is still, and he could become the greatest half we've ever had, but he's still behind Eric. There's no question about it.
I think when you just remember, though, Eric is an exception to everyone, really, isn't he? Yeah. But we are talking about different times and different stages from when Eric started, when the game went professional, and then when the game went semi-professional, and when the game went, so highly professional that it is as it is today. So we are talking about, Eric crosses kind of a few eras in that sense.
Yes.
But still, obviously, the greatest out half is, that Connacht has produced.
Well, Jack just recently passed out Eric for the most starts. Jack has 113 starts for Connacht. Eric had 112.
Wow.
But a big difference is in the points. Eric scored 1,038 points for Connacht. And I actually haven't updated this, but it's roughly around 780 points for Jack.
It's a little bit unfair to sort of compare Jack with Eric, because Eric's finished, whereas Jack still has hopefully another 3 or 4, maybe 5 years. You foresee a possibility that people might think of Jack instead of Eric at 10 in a number of years' time?
I think there's a huge similarity between those two players, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And most of it comes down to their mental fortitude.
Yeah.
and I think that's where they kind of stand apart in many ways from a lot of other players. I think Eric and Jack are quite similar in their passion for the game and their passion for getting better and their desire to be better and the way they go about being better. And Jack, I mean, Eric went to Dublin and played for Lansdowne. He broke away from Galwegians. So he had to go through all those changes in his life. He was only young at the time. He went to New Zealand for a small while as well, and I'm sure that was a developmental experience for him. Jack was thrown into quite a lot, and he's all that time he has coped with it. He's come back from the World Cup a little bit of a battered man for quite a bit of abuse that he got over there, and some of it by the media, and some of it I think unfairly. But Jack is a very strong person, and I think those two have got amazing mental strength and fortitude, and I put them in there's quite a lot of similarities, I believe, and I'm sure that Jack has the ability to go on as far as and further than Eric.
Wow, that sounds
I agree with that. I just say one thing though, and which I felt at the time, and even looking back now, I still kind of feel it, and I hope I'm correct in saying it because it's a good thing. But I don't think Jack has had to or will ever have to carry the province as much as Eric had to. And that, I hope Jack never has to do that.
Oh, I think, absolutely. I don't think anyone at the moment can go past Eric Elwood as the out half of Connacht.
And I'm assuming we're going to say the same at number 9, because I'm not sure anyone's going to come anywhere near Kieran Marmion. And before you guys jump in, Danny, give us the stats behind that.
Well, Kieran Marmion has 141 starts for Connacht, winning 45% of those games.
Yeah. And who's next?
The person second is Frank Murphy with 83 starts and 39% winning ratio.
So, I don't know. What do you guys think?
Well, it has to be Kieran for me. Even the way he's come back after being he's been shamefully treated a number of times by Ireland, and the way he's come back, and even the beginning of this year he's come back really well. I thought he was excellent against Ulster, but he another guy with massive mental fortitude because of the what's been thrown at him internationally over the years, and he comes back. I mean, even think about when he started, when Frank Murphy was there, got injured, and all of a sudden it seemed like there was no scrum half, and he came out of nowhere. And then as fans, we were all talking, we were saying, when Frank kind of became fit again, the talk was like, geez, you couldn't drop Kieran Marmion. He was unbelievable. He was week after week, another fella that seemed to do something, pull another trick out of the bag. Everybody remembers, all his sidesteps were bananas. His performance against was at Saracens, I thought, was one of the best I've ever seen in the sports count. I don't think we've anybody that has come to that level. Actually, I did think somebody that soldiered on for a long time there was Chris Keane, probably. Who
actually third on the list.
Was he? Okay. He's soldiered on there for a good while. But to me, you're the argument is for second place.
To just back you up on Marmion there, Backy. In Marmion's first 2 seasons, there was only 3 games he didn't start.
Come on, scrum half, it seems to be one of those positions where you need to have a bit more of an old head on your shoulders. You're bossing the pack. He would have been doing that from all his career, from when he played underage and that. But it's different coming into an adult setting and taking over. His first couple of seasons, he was utterly fantastic. What he did with Ireland against that team from down south, what are they called?
I don't know. Couldn't imagine.
Dave,
I'll bring you in here, Dave, just in order to let that one go. I'll bring Dave in. What are your thoughts, Dave?
He was brilliant, and when he went onto the wing against not Australia, he was superb there. No, unlike Henshaw, I saw in the schools final, went, he's going to make it to the very top. Marmion was not talked about, and he has never complained, never gone whatever he feels personally, He's never publicly cited anything that's negative about Connacht or indeed Ireland, and he is very right to, certainly about Ireland. He has been encouraged to leave, and we have to say the same about Bundy as well, and which ties into Linny's point about what do they bring beyond just 80 minutes on a Saturday, Sunday, Friday night. I think there is a huge, when we talk about the drop-off between Eric and Jack to what's underneath them, the drop-off from Kieran to Connor and Frank is huge. And then after that, remember, he kept John Cooney out of the Connacht side. That's what you need to say about Kieran Marmion. I
think what I will say about scrum halves is I think all scrum halves tend to be quite good readers of the game. They have to be quite smart. They have to coordinate between backs and forwards. And I think Frank Murphy is a very intelligent man who has gone on to a great career, a good career as a referee. Conor McGuinness, obviously, was another fellow who was very bright. He was on the board, I think, of Connacht Rugby for quite some time. But Kieran Marmion, he came here as a young lad, which was great. He has Irish family, obviously, in Connacht. So he has Connacht blood in him. He has a difference in his life because he has gone through life with his ups and downs, personal ups and downs. He has at a very young age, he suffered the loss of his father. And I think it makes a huge difference to a person's ability to adapt and to focus on what they want out of life. And I think Kieran is a person who possibly has suffered because he maybe doesn't have possibly when he's not that confident possibly in speaking in public or that sort of thing. He's been maybe possibly underrated, but I think his strength of character is beyond doubt. And please don't tell me, and I know how hard it must have been for him, but imagine being asked by Joe Schmidt to go to Dublin after he's been dropped from the World Cup team to train. I mean that just, there was a couple of them I think who went. I just think that takes incredible character. And what's really good, I think, about Kieran now is he's almost like put that behind him. And he's on a different road now. He's on a road to, I want to go to the World Cup. I've suffered. I've put it behind me. I want to be the best. And he's also showing a lot more leadership skills. He's being a lot more vocal. I think he's being a lot more vocal on the pitch. And I think he's always had that talent. And he should have gone. We all know he should have gone to the World Cup, When you're the incumbent number 2, you expect to have gone, and I know what a shock that must have been for Kieran, and so without a shadow of a doubt, Kieran Marmion is my scrum half.
Sounds good to me. Okay, let's move into the pack, into the big guys, and we'll start with the front row, and we'll almost take them as a full package, because I think that you could look at it. I think the stats are going to back it up, but you could look at it and as Lou said, you've Dennis Buckley at tight head, you'd have Finlay Bealham, and in between them you have Tom McCartney as being like the front row. I know Buckley didn't play in the final, but only because of injury. But you're looking at that, it's almost impossible to look past that in my eyes. But I'm going to ask you guys, what do you think? And we'll start with Dave this time.
Yeah, I suppose, but I'm worried about, I keep telling you, recency bias is an issue, because they're the best of the last, well, I was going to say the last 6 or 7 years, because they were almost for the entirety of that the front row for the last 5, certainly 4 or 5 years until Tom retired.
Hang on, Dave. If you're worried about recency bias, Danny, give us the stats.
The most successful front row we've had is Maher, Mulcahy and Finlay with 67% of 12 starts. Our most used front row is Buckley, McCartney and Bealham, who started 34 games together, winning 44%.
But that's what I'm saying. But I mean, that would be, well, my issue with recency bias is I can't. There are certain, there are going to be players back in the early days of professionalism who were bloody brilliant, who, because I didn't see them, I can't make an informed judgment on them. And that would be my that's why I say recency bias. I'm surprised, given if we're talking about contribution to the Connacht, there's a certain Ulster coach missing from that list.
Yeah, you're right. Played over 100 games for Connacht.
Maybe the youngsters only think he was ever a coach, which is not impossible because he gives the impression of having been born as a 40-year-old coach. He's a loveliest guy, one of the loveliest guys you'll ever meet. I'm surprised Dan hasn't been considered.
But then, like, Ronan Lockney gets starts in the final and starts and has, you know, the only reason he didn't play as many games as he did was that he covered 3 and both sides of the scrum, and then Brett Wilkinson was top class and probably would have been around for the final if he'd been injured.
There's another one who contributed to Connacht while he was here, but I presume he was here for 3 seasons, I think, and that was Robbie Morris.
Yes,
who was an outstanding prop in his day, and would have gone on for more had he not had a back injury and had to retire at, I think, about the age of 28 or something like that.
Lou said, I think 7 or 8 years ago, there was a very good chance that we wouldn't be talking about Dennis Buckley as the starting Lou said for Connacht. We wouldn't be talking about Dennis Buckley as a rugby player, and he's turning around both on and off the pitch. I mean, he wins scrum penalties for somebody. He's too small to be a Lou said. He is.
A lot of Argentinian props to disagree with you.
I know, but this is the Irish logic. He doesn't run through people. I've never seen Cian Healy or Dave Kilcoyne or any of the other props that have been loose heads for Ireland spin a pass in the base of a ruck as well as Dennis Buckley does.
Absolutely. Okay, Lindley, your thoughts?
Well, I have done here Robbie Morris, Ronan Lockney, Dennis Buckley, Brett Wilkinson, and Dan McFarland.
Oh,
those are the 5 players who came to mind when I was thinking of this. I think we've got more to see from Buckley.
Yeah.
Ask me in a couple of years, and I might turn around and say Dennis Buckley without a shadow of a doubt. To be honest, it's not a position that obviously I have huge, deep understanding because I've never been a prop. I think Dan McFarland was a very intelligent prop, a very technically efficient prop. And I think Ronan Lockney is another one who was a very intelligent prop. And Brett Wilkinson, Brett Wilkinson was, he was a stalwart really for Connacht, during some difficult years as well. I really actually have not made my mind up on this position at all.
Okay, Danny, throw some stats in here before I bring in Packy.
Sure. Well, Brett Wilkinson has started the most games at Loosehead for Connacht with 161, only a 32% winning ratio. Buckley was in second with 139 starts with a 54% winning ratio. And then in third, with a good bit behind on starts, is Dan McFarland with 57 and only a 42% winning ratio.
Go on, give me the tight heads while you're there, and then we talk to Niall.
Sure. Our most capped tight head is Finlay Beelum with 79 starts and a 49% winning ratio. You've Ayu in second with 54 starts and a 39% winning ratio. And in third is Peter Bracken with 49 starts and a 49% winning ratio.
Oh, wow.
And Nathan White 1 game behind. Niall, your thoughts? We'll bring the hooker in now in a second.
I'd have to say Brett Wilkinson for Lucid, another fella that was, brought on the cusp of Ireland. He was in Ireland squads, extended Ireland squads, got injured at absolutely rotten times. A fella, he came from club rugby, wasn't in a professional environment, and then just, came into a squad.
Club rugby in South Africa now. Club rugby in South Africa.
It is. No, in fact, club rugby in South Africa, but he came in and just, when you thought somebody might start, play a few games, he came in, in a front row. And one of the things, but from back then when he started, was Connacht had a great pack, grizzly pack, and he was literally first name on the team sheet every day. I think he was a criminally underused player again. I think he would have, when he naturalised, he would have been a great addition in Ireland at the time, because I think Loosehead was a kind of a, I don't know, it was a weak spot, but shit, that's another story. But I'd have to go for Brett at Loosehead. Tom McCarthy, then you'd have to say possibly never hit. Well, he did, I suppose. Hit the personal highs of Sean Cronin, but we're talking about for Connacht. So I'd go for
if he'd scored that try in the final, if Sexton hadn't held his hand above the ball in the final, that break in the final was one of the greatest ever.
Yeah, and he's burst. Like, he was such a cool character, and his burst of language after when he got held up was fantastic. Got the Sky Sports commentator to apologise actually for the language being used on the television. But do you know what? In something we forget in all this, and I remember when he arrived to Connacht originally, Finlay Bealham arrived really as a kind of a, used to call it ambi prop. He used to, he could play loose head or tight. It still can. He was an awful lot lighter back there. But to do what he's done, Finlay, arriving, then becoming, one of the standout tight heads in Ireland at a time when Ireland weren't producing very much. Has locked out scrum time and time again. Has real match and game awareness, I think. And of course, you'd have to be as a tight head, but he's a real character. But I have to say, Finlay, like Nathan White and Rodney were, great guys, and that Nathan White probably came at the tail end of her career, really got the most out of himself. Yeah. But you'd have to say Bealham at 3. That has to be right. So I would go for Brett Wilkinson, my loose head, and tight head Finlay Bealham.
Oh, actually, well, look, thank you for crystallising some of those issues that I'm having, Packy, because you have, I've looked at the hookers, and I think Dave Heffernan is another one who's going to be up there in the future in a couple of years, without a shadow of a doubt. There was Sean Cronin, Bernard Jackman, who was a very talented player as well, and Adrian Flavin, of course. But I would agree. Sorry?
Don't forget Fogarty.
And yes, John Fogarty as well. And I know that Nathan White contributed a huge amount when he was here because of, I guess, a lot of at that stage when Nathan White came in, you're looking at a slightly difference in the way the game is treated here now and the way the game was treated in New Zealand, and his vast experience. And I think he contributed to Connacht quite a lot, as did Peter Bracken in a different way, in a younger time. But I have to say I would agree with Brett Wilkinson and Finlay Bealham.
I think the guys have made a brilliant case for Brett, made a brilliant case for Finlay. I think I have no problem with that. Hookers, I wonder if the fans haven't gone with, they've seen what Sean Cronin has done with Leinster and gone, he used to play for Connacht, and gone that, because I don't necessarily think in terms of all the hookers that have played for us, I think Dave Heff should have been in there, but I have no problem with as is with Brett, Tom and Finlay.
Okay, there is an interesting stat on the winning percentages for the hookers. Danny, there's only one hooker who's played more than 20 times for Connacht that's got a better than 50% winning ratio.
Shane Delahunt with a 71% winning ratio.
Let's go back. So your hookers, are you looking at McCartney, Flavin, Fogarty, Cronin, Jackman, Heffernan? Who are you going for? Lindy, give me your choice.
I'll go with McCartney.
Dave?
Yeah, Tom Mack.
And you're not going to go any different, are you, Packy?
No, I have to agree with that, yeah.
I just want to jump in here as well. Tom McCartney is actually the highest scoring front 5 player for Connacht. He's scoring 40 tries.
Wow.
Well, there you go. Excellent.
Okay,
let's move into the second row and the back row, which are going to be quite interesting because there's so many people to choose from here. So many. Okay, before we start, Danny, give us a couple of stats on some of these players that we need to, for the second row. We just start with the second row to start with. 4 top 5 starters at 4, top 5 starters at 5. Don't need the winning percentages. We don't need them just yet.
Okay, just start. Okay, so the person that started the most at 4 is Michael Swift with 127 starts. In second is Ultan Delan with 64 starts. Third is Quinn Rue with 49 starts. 4 is Christian Short with 39. And 5 is Dave Gannon with 35. And starting at 5, number 1 is Farley with 146 starts. Second is McCarthy with 64 starts. Third is is Rue with 39 starts. 4 is Andrew Brown with 38 starts, and 5 is Muldowney with 37 starts.
Okay, Packy, I'll give you first lash at this. Again, from your position on the back of the field, you'd be very well cognizant of what second rows are capable of.
Absolutely. Where do you go with that?
Yeah.
Michael Swifty played for so long. I'm sure he played, 4, 5, and 6. If with 7 as well, somebody was telling me. But
he played one game at 7, 100% winning record.
One game at There you go. Ulton there, shooting star of a player. I said this is what I'm looking at here, and Andrew Farley, Andy Muldowney, Mike McCarthy, Quinn Rue. It kind of goes. You kind of look at this and you think, two of the most iconic players, or 2 players that made the most, effect to Connacht, are the least decorated.
Yeah.
Insofar as Mike McCarthy, Quinn Rue, and Ultan Deland played for Ireland quite regularly. Ali Muldowney, that year, I suppose people can't look past that year, and it's really difficult to look past 2016. And just what Ali Muldowney brought to the game, and I suppose maybe not him on his own, and I know there's a lot of New Zealand players, but up here certainly he kind of almost has changed the way, in some ways, that second rows play the game. They're not just the bean poles you throw the ball to. They have other uses, surprisingly. And then Swifty, he's just an icon, really. I think everybody's favourite moment is, one of their favourite moments in watching Connacht is the try he scored against Leinster.
Oh.
And then Ultan has just, like I said, another player that, had tough times and, made a big decision when he was quite young. And then to see what Mike McCarthy did for Ireland, he really come on as a player. Jeez, I don't know where to begin on this. I probably personally would go Ultan and Ali Muldowney. I think I'm only looking at it in for what they achieved that year, and I know the other guys weren't playing that year, but I think they were utterly top class.
The stats back you up on this, Packy. The partnership of Ali Muldowney and Ultan Deland has a 75% winning ratio.
There you go. Case closed.
See, the fullback knows what he's talking about. The fullback knows what he's talking about. Okay, Lindley, what are your thoughts?
As a servant of Connacht Rugby and a continual servant of Connacht Rugby who produced so much, you can't go past Michael Swift without a shadow of a doubt. He's an iconic figure. We know that, and he's an iconic figure in Connacht, and he gets the reception he gets because of what he produced on the pitch, and because he's such a generous person in spirit, and so he's definitely one of my 2 choices. Once again, I hesitate to give. I'm looking at Ultan Deland, and I don't think he's the best yet. I think we haven't seen. I think
use of the word yes.
What?
I like the use of.
I don't think we've seen the best. I don't think we've seen the best from Ultan yet.
Yeah.
Ultan is a player of huge potential, and obviously, had a difficult period for a while there, and he's coming out of it, and that's brilliant. And I think he's going to mature into a much better player in the years to come. So I'm looking at Ali Muldowney because of what he added to Connacht in a very, very special time. He has the power and the bulk. He had the mindset. He contributed, to a team coming from England, and I just look at Ali and what he produced that year, and to this day, do not believe he should ever have been let go. I'm going to say Swift and Muldowney, and that's not forgetting the 2 contributions of both Damien and Andrew Brown, who are local lads who have produced a huge amount for the club.
And my choice, my one that I'd be thrown into the second row, and I know I'm not meant to be because I'm only hosting this, but we Andrew Farley, who was a phenomenal player.
Yes, I agree. Yes, you're absolutely right. No, I totally agree, and you're right. You know, Andrew made a huge contribution on not just on the pitch, but off the pitch. You know, I know we're talking about the best players on the pitch, but you know, as a contribution to Connacht Rugby, one of the most polite Australian players.
He was a gentleman. He was a gentleman.
Yeah,
oh, brilliant.
You know, I have to say, look, I'm going to be truthfully honest here. There's a huge difference between New Zealanders and Australians. if anyone hasn't realised that yet. The thing about New Zealanders that all New Zealanders play rugby. The thing about Australians is that most of the posh boys play rugby because they go to private schools.
Right,
so they're very well educated and they're very polite. And Andrew was one of those. He was a total gentleman. And I haven't put him on the list because I think that for the time that was in it, Ali Maldani produced a huge amount to get that trophy.
He certainly did. Okay, Dave, you're going to have the deciding choice here.
It's one of those horrible ones. You ask me tomorrow, I'll pick two guys that we haven't even talked about yet. I think we have to go. Who would the? I mean, it's on the pitch. I mean, we're being ruthless. We've got to talk about who contributed the most on the pitch. Another day. I'd even think, crikey, all right. And again, in a couple of years' time, we'll be talking Thornbury. We really will be. I just think that what have Connacht won on the pitch and who was central to it. And even though I suppose you have the situation where he wasn't here that long, but he made a huge amount of difference to what happened on the pitch, and therefore Ali has to be, because he was central to what Pat was trying to do. With no Ali Muldowney, it may have happened, but it may not have been as successful. And we saw what's happened since we tried to replicate it when he wasn't there. It didn't work as well because it's not in the skill sets of the other players. They bring something else to the table. Alton what he's done so far has been superb. Where he's brought himself from, some of the stories I've heard of what he did off the pitch to make himself a rugby player. And remember, he lost a year as well through a ligament injury when he was like 19. So quite impressive what he's done. Andrew Farley, you don't play 100 games for Connacht in those days when you're more likely to lose than win. I suppose ultimately, and what right at this moment of time and when we're recording this, because I can say with the back rows and the second rows, I could change my mind easily tomorrow, is if you can outrun Andrew Conway as a second row to score in a corner, you kind of got something. And if you can play 250 times for a team that is, again, I come back to, is more likely on paper to lose than win, and you can be a second row who sets up a men's grooming company, yeah. Right now, it's Swifty and Muldowney.
Okay, on to probably the most competitive area in the whole of the field in 6, 7, and 8. And Danny, you can tell us we have 2 players who've played in every position in the back 5. Who are they?
Owen Brigney and Michael Swift.
Michael Swift is in there yet again. But the back 3, so we're looking at, the back row. You're looking at the fans' choice. By the way, we've gone more or less with the fans' choice all the way along, apart from Matt Austin, who jumped in. The fans hadn't obviously thought about it enough, but everywhere else we're doing pretty well with the fans' choice. But the back row, we're looking at 6, Ray O'Fisa, Owen McKeown, Andrew Brown, who has been mentioned in the second row. At 7, Jenny O'Connor, Colby Fayenga, and Willie Falloon. And in the back row, John Muldoon, George Naupu, and Jared Butler. And of course, Muldoon could have been picked at 6 there based on his stats from earlier on. Lindy, we'll let you go first on this one.
I had John Muldoon at 6. I was looking at 2 players who were, I think, pretty obvious at 7, and obviously a great hometown lad.
Yeah.
Who some people believed he'd never play for Connacht, for Ireland, and that was Johnny O'Connor, who had to go to Wasps, and Ray O'Fisa. I think Ray O'Fisa came at a time and contributed a huge amount to that position. And at number 8, I didn't go past George Naiupu. Look, it sounds like I'm being a total sort of down under.
No.
Yeah, George Naiupu, and there was and the funniest thing is there was a young player who I always admired at number 8 many years ago, and that was John O'Sullivan.
That's who I was.
Fine player,
yeah, fabulous player.
Well, I'm glad someone else thought of that, because I think he was a talent that was totally lost. Yeah, I thought he had huge potential, and his name was always as a player who had potential, but unfortunately he wasn't able to fulfil that here in Connacht. So my selections for 6, 7, 8 are John Muldoon, Johnny O'Connor, George Naiupu.
Okay, Dave.
Yeah, I think Linny has pretty much explained why. I think there's a few other guys we need to. I think we've been slightly. We struggled at 7. We've never really had a consistent 7 apart from Johnny Concrete. I'm surprised Willie Falloon was so high, because he's kind of one of those forgotten guys. He obviously made an impression on the fans. I would have, again, looking at, we mentioned Nihi playing for, being part of the Bristol setup. Jake Heenan is also part of the Bristol setup, and he was very badly affected by injuries. Johnny's a shoo-in at 7, because Colby wasn't here long enough. But Johnny was something special. I mean, at a time when Wasps could have picked any 7 from around the world with the cash they had at the time, they picked him. And then Ray Ofisa as a 6. Ray Ofisa was huge for Connacht in those transitional phase from went through from Mike Bradley through Eric and into the very, very. I don't think he was here for Pat. It would have been interesting what Pat could have done with Ray, but unfortunately, we couldn't. He moved on, and then the big debate is at 8, because I think, and this is, I'm going to let Niall explain what he said, but Niall has a big issue with what's happened to Connacht since George Naiupu, and I think what George brought was exceptional. I'm going to be completely contrary, and just because I saw more of Mull at 8 than 6. I saw them both at 8. But because I saw Mull more at 8 than 6, I'm going to put George at 6 and Mull at 8, just to be contrary.
Packy, before I bring you in to get your thoughts, Danny, just throw a couple of stats out there about a couple of those back row players, because there's one person in the open side that's not been mentioned. And it's fair enough, because he played at a time when Connacht weren't very successful, and that was Matt Lacey.
Yeah, well, I'll give you an interesting one. Connacht have had 221 different partnerships in the back row.
How many games have we played?
We've actually played 554.
Jesus.
Yeah. But out of the back row, we only have 8 of those back row partnerships that have started more than 10 games together. Our most starts at 6, as we said earlier, was John Muldoon with 167 starts. The next closest was Michael Swift with only 60. Then we had Andrew Brown with 46. And I'll just jump across to 7, where Johnny O'Connor, by far, again, has the most starts with 112 starts. Next was Lacey with 63. And in third was Ray Ofisa with 62. Just to finish out on 8, John Muldoon was again the most started at 8 with 111. Then you had Colin Rigney with 80 and George Naiupu with 69 starts.
Okay, Packy, has that helped you with any of your decisions there?
I think I'd go with the same back row as Linley. I think it's the same back row as Linley. I'd have John Muldoon at 6. Way back, just before he broke his arm that time, or when he was playing for Ireland, he was phenomenal. Like he was probably the top 6 in the league at the time. Well, he was bordering on the top 6 that was there, including all the Munster guys. They seemed to have a monopoly on the Ireland back row at the time, way back then. But I just felt he was at that level, and it was a shame that he broke his arm that time. I probably would go for him at 6, just for the purposes of this. And Johnny O'Connor, I think, just has to be the 7. And the first incarnation of George Naiupu at 8 for me.
Very good, very good. Okay, Danny, we're missing one player there that needs to be brought out. He's only just retired. Give us some stats on him.
Owen McKeown.
Yes.
He's the most successful 6 Connacht have had. He's 30 at starting. He's 35 starts with a 57% winning ratio. When he also started quite a few games at 7. He was the second most successful when starting at 7 with 62% as well, off 13 starts. And at 8, he started 54 times at 8 with a 39% winning ratio.
We'll stick a 1 on the bench because I think that he sort of covers every position in the back row.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm going to throw in somebody that you know, I suppose when I arrived in Galway back in the late 90s, went to watch my first game, and the player that stood out by a mile for me for Connacht was a guy called Junior Charlie, who I did not believe play rugby the way he played rugby. It was just amazing to watch. The guy was just a metronome of power and speed and everything. Just, you know, I just wanted to throw him in there because, you know, I just thought he was an amazing rugby player and was one of the reasons I supported Connacht over my native Leinster because I just thought he was amazing.
Yeah, he was the first of a breed, wasn't he, really, of New Zealanders who came over here, I suppose at the instigation of Warren Gatland.
Yeah.
And they really brought and added a huge amount at that particular time when it needed to be added to Connacht, to be fair. And I think in many ways they showed the way forward, the way to play the game and the attitude they had to the game and the professionalism sometimes they brought to the game, as well as the humour, if you could understand their humour. And yeah, Junior Charlie, an amazing player, and you know, who I think contributed a huge amount at that particular time in Connacht's, you know, history.
He certainly did. Okay, that's great stuff, guys. I think we've picked a pretty decent side there. I think it's not that far off the side that the fans picked. I think we're only looking at maybe 2 positions that are different, and Ray O'Fisa has been dropped from the fans, and we brought in George Naupu and moving Mull back to 6, and then we brought in for his versatility, I think we brought in Matt Mostyn over Addy Loken. Everything else was pretty much the same. So we'll post the team up on our Twitter page, and that was good fun. Thanks, everybody.
Loose, cut it loose. Break out, or nothing changes. Sad and confused. Don't wait until you